eager to be exonerated and looks forward to resolving these matters as soon as possible. For 7 weeks, the question remained, who is behind those heinous stabbings?
The suspect is currently in jail in Pennsylvania. His defense attorney says the suspect plans to waive his extradition hearing as he is eager to be exonerated, which is why he wants to expedite being transported to Idaho.
He is very intelligent. In my hour conversation with him, that comes off. I can tell that, and he understands where we are right now.
He's going to be in Idaho by next week. And again, I'm not defending this guy, but if he's smart and his lawyer, if he's talked to a lawyer and his lawyer is smart, they would waive extradition. Why? Because that accelerates the process. Under Idaho law, for example, within 14 days, Alicia, of him having his first court appearance in Idaho, there has to be a preliminary hearing. That's critical because the prosecutors then need to have what's called substantial evidence at that preliminary hearing to prove each element of the crime. That's why this forensic analysis process is crucial. It's got to be done 24/7 within the next 2 weeks.
The feeling is actually pretty bittersweet. This has been a tragedy for the families, but also for the community and the university as well.
Moscow police say 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was arrested Friday morning in Monroe County, Pennsylvania, charged with killing the 4 students. He's a graduate student studying criminology at Washington State University, which is just a 10-minute drive from where the murders happened. Police say they had not been releasing much information to protect the investigation.
As the chief said, we have to weigh out the importance of the case moving forward and the eventual prosecution, number one. But number two, we wouldn't want to tip our hand or make an error to where a potential suspect could get away.
His attorney says people should wait to pass judgment until after a fair trial.
He's doing okay. He's shocked a little bit. Obviously, he's calm right now. We don't really know much about the case.
Although a suspect has been arrested for the murders of Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan, police say they are still searching for more answers.
If anybody has had any information about him, knows him, has anything that they can share, our department, our investigators would really, really appreciate that information.
Relief.
I think there's a big relief.
And closure.
It's a closure
of sorts. An announcement of an arrest made in the Moscow murders does seem to lift a lot of the fear that lingered over this community the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, we were all just on pins and needles.
But it hasn't removed all of the sting of what happened in the early morning hours of November 13th inside this house on King Road. 4 students stabbed to death.
I think they were surprised that it was somebody within the community that did it.
This has been a horrible tragedy for our community, for the University of Idaho, and absolutely for the families of these loved ones. And knowing that they were finally in custody was a celebration of sorts, but then also it's still sombering. You know that no matter what we do, having him in custody does not bring these 4 people back.
And unfortunately, it doesn't stop the speculation that still lingers, like how investigators connected Kohberger to the crime, or how they found him in Pennsylvania.
Yes, there's a lot of information throughout this entire investigation. There's been a lot of information, rumors, misinformation put out there. And from day one, we have said if it does not come from our department, if it does not come from our official source, then we can't confirm that.
But Captain Dollinger can confirm one thing.
The person we have in custody is the one we believe committed these acts. We are still investigating. We're still looking into every aspect, but we believe Kohberger is our suspect. We believe we have our man. Anytime you go to a crime of this nature, it's going to be horrible to see and quite traumatic. It did take a toll on the whole department. This is a tight-knit community. It's a small community, and when something like this happens, there's no way you can't take it personally.
I mean, it's a small town.
Yeah.
It's a real small community, and they're nice people.
I say that the one fact I do know is they told me an hour into us releasing the name, we had over 400 people calling in. So we continue to ask for that. We continue to ask for more. Every tip, everybody that knew him is only going to help us. I don't know where they came from. If it's any indicative of this case, they've come from all over. the nation. So that's all part of those pieces that we have to hold until we can release information with the, after he gets to Idaho and the release of that information. But we're bound to hold. That's part of our investigation. I said early on that we're not going to let any stone go unturned, and I meant that. And we're following up on everything, just like we're in this new phase now, and we're going to follow up to get to know who he is and everything about him that we can.
At the murder scene.
All those facts are still sealed. They will come out. I know people are anxious for that, and we will have the answers to that, but in the time that we can give it. So I ask once again, just be patient. I know I've asked that a lot of times, but we are bound by the law now. All that information will come out as well. It's part of that investigation. It's part of that next step. So.
Okay.
Every piece is valuable, and I don't even know what was collected at this point in time. And that's part of that further investigation that we're going to hold. But I know that the search warrant was served there. We're still waiting for stuff to come back. We're still looking at everything. We're still having things processed. And I couldn't verify that right now anyway. That's part of that sealed piece. But there's still items coming in from the lab. Like we said, we got a phone call that it was through the court that we needed to stop and give a little bit more time, so we did that. So, well, at that point in time, we were ready to start that process. And then the court, like I said, someone from the court asked us to stop that process, so we did. And we'll continue to do as we're asked there, and we'll start the cleanup as soon as we can again.
Or?
It could be many reasons. Could be for the defense counsel. Could be that they just want to hold it for a little bit. But it was a decision from the court. It's still our crime scene at this point, so yeah, it'll still be under security. And that is one of the reasons that I stated that we are holding everything close, and we're protecting the integrity of the case. We want unbiased individuals in this case. We want people to not know all the facts, so that if there's a jury selected from here, that we can get that pool. I'm not sure. We've had cases here before where they've been able to get a jury pool, but that happens with Bill Thompson and his team. So that would be a great question to ask Bill.
Yeah.
We investigated every piece of this investigation. We looked at everybody that we believed was involved or not involved in any way, that knew our victims. So we were very active in that, and through that investigation, that's where we get to the point where we can rule. It's as important to rule people out as it is to keep them in the investigation. So as we gathered information that was led us to believe that they were no longer a part of that, we ruled them out. That will come as soon as Bill Thompson and his office feel that is available for the public. I suppose that could happen. There will be decisions made by people that are probably higher up than me that will need to make those decisions, but I suppose that is a possibility. Honestly, I don't have an answer to that question. I don't know if it's through the management, property management, or if it's the owner or what, but someone is.
Okay.
Right now, a lot lighter. A lot of people speculated on my facial expressions and stuff. I'm genuinely a pretty upbeat, happy individual, so I smile naturally a lot. I know a lot of people read into that. There was nothing to that. It was just probably me doing it naturally.
Custody.
There always is. There's always that weight of knowing that you have a person in custody, and I think that gives a great relief to your organization, gives a great relief to your community, and in this case, the state, the nation, and I think even the world. What I feel is we did our job and we did it right, and we said from the beginning we're going to protect the integrity of the case. We're going to continue to do it right, and we're not a prideful group. What we are is a group that we had a job to do. We did that, and we are happy that we did it the way we did it because of the outcome. I think it's always hard. It's emotional at times. We want to give that information. We want to give the families some closure and give them information. We want to give our community, but it is so important to hold that information and keep it right where it was, so that when we made an arrest, and now as we continue further, there will be more information that we're going to hold till the end, because we want to get a conviction. I have personally, it's been a while, but I have talked to them on the phone throughout the first couple of weeks of this. I wanted to reassure them is that we were going to do everything we could to bring justice for them, for our 4 victims, and for everybody that's involved, and we would try to answer any questions that we could through the process. I would challenge every police organization across the nation to know the importance, even with the pressures that are put on you, the importance of keeping the integrity of the case solid. It's your job. It's what we sign on to do. We sign on to make sure that we do it right, and I challenge other departments to do that. I think we always feel the emotion. You know, I'm a fairly emotional individual. You know, if you've been around me and you get to know me, I am that way because I care, and I care a lot. And a lot of us want to give the right answers and do it right, but it is difficult at times. You know, we are building a family here. We started that years ago, and we want, you want to take care of your family. You want to make sure that they're healthy. So we have brought in counselors. I've talked to counselors. I have a great relationship with my wife, who I can, talk to about things. And we promote that. We want our officers to be healthy. We want our families to be healthy. We brought in counselors for the families as well, because we know that it's a solid base. The family becomes a solid base for an officer, and they're the support system, and we want that to be healthy. I think there's a lot of things, it was 4 people murdered with the use of a knife. There's things that you don't forget when you go on any of these calls, and we don't want that to build over time. So we want to get them the help that they can get. We want to have a good, solid structure to help them at home, so that when they come back to work, they are ready to serve our community.
Okay.
Now we get to know who this individual is. We're focused now on who he is. That's why we keep asking people, send us information. If you've known him, if you've dealt with him at any point in time. This is now where we become more laser focused on one thing, and we're going to find out as much information as we can, but we still need our community and people's help.
But
we are looking at everything, and I've said that from the beginning. We don't know what small tip may come in that somebody may think is totally irrelevant, but we go, that ties something together for us. And what we're asking is people to give us those pieces and let us work through those to see if that's exactly what we need to help further this case. That's part of that investigation, that we're still putting pieces together. We're still gathering information. That's why we still ask people, send us tips on the individual. Send us any information you have, because that's all going to build part of that picture. Still, it's going to give us even more information.
The game changer was the car. I've learned that they traced this car for weeks and finally located it, and that's what led them to Kohberger. But look, what really concerns me here is we're all happy that he's been arrested, but we can't do the celebration parade yet. He hasn't been convicted. And let's walk through the process. The first stage of a murder prosecution is an arrest. It takes less evidence to get an arrest warrant than it does to sustain what's called a preliminary hearing that's going to have to happen in a couple of weeks in Idaho, and then an actual trial. And why is that important? Because these forensic experts, Alicia, they are going to have to work around the clock. You've got 4 potential crime scenes. You've got the scene of the crime, his apartment, Pullman, you got the parents' home, and you've got the car. They've got to be scouring all 4 of those, especially the car now. For example, any blood stains in the car, any hair fibers on the seat of the car, any fingerprints on the steering wheel that might have DNA. And here's another big game changer. I think this could be the breaking piece of evidence in this case. They are going to need to get a DNA sample, a DNA swab of Kohberger. Either he does it voluntarily, or they got to get a court order ASAP to get his DNA swab. And 2 of these victims had defense wounds. So I bet you anything that there might be some his skin under the fingernails of 2 of these victims, and they'll now be able to do that DNA match. I think that's really what's going to break this case. Now, the last point I want to make is you got his phone, right? You got to go back to phone records, any text messages, because it would really help the case, Alicia, if they could show he knew these victims, right? Because the chief came out and said, look, this was targeted. So was he texting any of these victims? On social media, was he connected to any of these victims?
Right.
And then also his bank records.
Front page of the New York Post, as this headline finally has come out, headline of an arrest that people have waited so long for. And the reason that you see Criminal Mind is because we have now learned that the suspect, 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger, was studying criminology. And what's really interesting in these last few hours is that former and current classmates of his at University of Washington are coming forward and talking about what he was like recently in school, what he was like, former classmates talking about what he was like in high school. A lot of people said that he felt bullied, he was a bully, he was aggressive at times, he was socially awkward. But one of the most interesting things that a student told the New York Post, that we're actually in an email exchange with right now, is that after the murders, he went to his criminology class and took part in a discussion. He was in the room as students were talking about the Idaho murders and how odd it was and how come there was no evidence and what do we think is happening and are we in danger? And he sat there through that conversation, that group discussion, according to this student, and said that he was quiet, he was deadpan, and obviously are alarmed now knowing that the killer was sitting right among them, not taking visitors right now, but all we know is that he is in the suicide prevention vest. He's not taking visitors. He will be here, as far as we know, until Tuesday, unless something changes between now and that hearing. Kohberger, and they don't know if there's any connection. It doesn't seem like there is at this point, but they just don't know. So what we're looking for is the information in that probable cause affidavit. That affidavit cannot be open, meaning we can't find out what investigators said was the probable cause to arrest him until he is extradited back to Idaho. So until he goes back there, it is state law. There's nothing anybody can do about it. We're not going to learn anything about that affidavit until he is physically in the state of Idaho. But once that happens, the Moscow police chief told Fox News today with our investigative journalist, Christina Corbin, that once he gets back there, we could possibly be learning more, but they are, once again, still trying to keep that information close. They still have a lot more to go, and now that we have a face and a name, they are hoping that more people will come forward and tell them more about, now that we know who we think this is, what can you tell us about him? Were you friends with him? Did you see him at the apartment complex? When you were in class, did he have any wounds on his hands? Did you notice anything about him? So that's the kind of information. Now that the name and the face is out and the mugshot is out there, investigators want people to come forward. They want people to bring more information about anything at all. No information is too small in this case, as we saw with just that glimpse of the white Elantra, which ended up being a major break in the case.